Welcome to the Nation ASEAN Plus. I'm PASHA RAHIM at Wisma Bernama here in Kuala Lumpur, the home of Malaysia's national news agency. In this episode, we bring you stories that made the week and insightful perspectives across this dynamic and diverse region. But that's not all. Shortly, I'll be speaking with Peter NICOLL, managing partner from Counter Risk Consultancy Malaysia, Sendirian Berhad, on Malaysia's leadership in the Myanmar crisis. We've seen some significant developments within the ASEAN bloc this week, but let's start right here at home, here in Malaysia. Malaysian Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has strongly condemned the recent attack in Pahalgam, Indian-administered Kashmir. He described it as a calculated and inhuman assault which has no place in any civilized society. He also emphasized the need for wisdom and restraint in responding to the tragedy, warning against allowing acts of terror to deepen division. The Prime Minister further called on the international community to support efforts in identifying and prosecuting the perpetrators behind the attack. In another development, Malaysia's Central Bank and the Treasury Department will review the International Monetary Fund's latest assessment on Malaysia's real gross domestic product (GDP) as reported in the April 2025 World Economic Outlook. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim said that a complete statement will be delivered during the special parliamentary sitting on May 5th. Anwar, who is also Finance Minister, said the review of real GDP is not limited to Malaysia, but part of a broader global reassessment. Moving on, Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi said the ASEAN Unity Drive 2025 reflects Malaysia's strong commitment to fostering regional integration. It also aims to promote sustainable mobility and advance innovation across Southeast Asia. Officiating the flag-off ceremony in Jakarta on Tuesday, he said the convoy, led by the Proton E-MAS 7 across 9 ASEAN countries, was more than just a physical expedition. Ahmad Zahid believes that this initiative not only highlights Malaysia's growing leadership in the electrical vehicle and automotive innovation space, but also reflects the country's broader vision for a resilient and forward-looking ASEAN. Next, according to the Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Fadillah Yusof, Turkey has expressed interest in becoming a dialogue partner at the 2025 ASEAN Summit to be held in Kuala Lumpur in May and September. The interest was conveyed by Turkish Vice President Cevdet Yilmaz during a courtesy call in Ankara on Tuesday, held as part of his two-day official working visit to the Republic. Fadillah said Turkey hoped Malaysia, as ASEAN chair this year, could support the aspiration. He added that Turkey could be considered for participation in the business segment of the ASEAN Energy Ministers meeting in September, even if consensus on formal partnership has yet to be reached. In other news, Chief Minister of Penang, Chow Kon Yeow, said the state has both the potential and the responsibility to emerge as a regional education hub. He said the ambition was anchored by the state's educational institutions such as University Science Malaysia, Penang Skills Development Centre and Penang Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics ecosystem. This foundation is further strengthened by decades of close industry-academia collaboration with global industrial giants such as Intel, AMD, Bosch and others. Next, Malaysia's Tourism, Arts and Culture Minister Tiong King Sing said the rich arts and cultural heritage of ASEAN countries offer immense potential for further growth. He said in recent years, ASEAN has not only advanced economically, but also witnessed a growing recognition of its arts and cultural heritage. He noted that this unique heritage has emerged as one of the most promising avenues for driving inclusive growth, creating jobs, empowering local communities and preserving the grouping's rich traditions. The Ministry of Education is prepared to implement home-based teaching and learning or PDPR arrangements during the ASEAN Summit in May and October to help ease traffic congestion. Its Minister Fadlina Siddique said that her ministry is in the process of identifying the affected schools to ensure the ASEAN program runs smoothly during that period and to help alleviate road congestion. She was responding to a proposal by Foreign Minister Datuk Sri Muhammad Hassan to implement work from home and PDPR arrangements during the ASEAN summit, a proposal that will be brought to the Cabinet for consideration. The Foreign Minister reportedly said that the proposal stemmed from the challenges and inconveniences faced by the public, particularly in Kuala Lumpur and Putrajaya, due to road closures during the state visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping to Malaysia. In the meantime, Maldives President Muhammad Muizzu is set to begin a 4-day official visit to Malaysia on Sunday, 27th April. The visit is aimed at strengthening bilateral ties and fostering new avenues of cooperation across regional and global fronts. This will be Muizzu's first official visit to Malaysia since he became president in November 2023. A number of MOUs in key areas of cooperation will be signed during the visit. I'm off to a short break, and when we come back, I'll be speaking to Peter NICOLL from Counter Risk Consultancy Malaysia Sendirian Berhad on Malaysia's leadership in the Myanmar crisis. Don't wander off, I'll be right back. This is The Nation ASEAN Plus. As the ceasefire in Myanmar collapses under renewed violence by the junta, questions mount over regional preparedness, risk mitigation and the human cost of inaction. Malaysia, under Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, has chosen not to stand idle, engaging with both sides of the conflict in an attempt to stabilize the region and prioritize humanitarian access. With us is Peter NICOLL, founder of Counter Risk Consultancy and a leading expert in crisis and threat management, to weigh in on the security and strategic dimensions of Malaysia's role and what it means for regional resilience and leadership. Peter, with the Myanmar junta breaching the ceasefire, how do you assess Malaysia's decision to actively engage both sides from a crisis management and risk containment perspective?
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to come on the show with you. In answer to your question, the key to positive escalation and resolution is that you have to engage with both sides. Engaging with one side just doesn't work. So Malaysia's position is judgmentally sound and removes, any bias or emotion, and it indicates a real desire to find a way to end this conflict. So both sides are key actors in the ongoing crisis, and as such, any win here has to take into account the suggestions, the wishes, standpoints of all sides, and only then can a negotiated, long-lasting solution be found. Crisis is about managing and also recovery. So whilst Malaysia is obviously engaged with the management of this crisis, its strategy will most certainly have long-term positive impacts on the recovery for Myanmar.
Right. Peter, from your standpoint, does Anwar's approach, especially engaging the junta, pose reputational risk, or is this a strategic necessity to de-escalate a worsening conflict?
From a diplomatic viewpoint, this would appear to be the correct strategic decision at this time. But as with all negotiations, there always remains a risk of reputational damage if the results are not seen to be effective in resolving the situation moving forward. So the Prime Minister is taking a chance, but one that would appear to be very worthwhile. And of course, at a time when other nations have been unable to engage with Myanmar. So this is a real sign of leadership from Anwar, not only as the Prime Minister of Malaysia, but also as Malaysia now holds the chairmanship of ASEAN.
Speaking of ASEAN, it has long been critiqued for its lack of decisive action. Do you see Malaysia's response as a potential model for ASEAN crisis leadership?
Indeed, yes. It certainly shows a strong willingness to address conflicts within ASEAN that have generally been poorly addressed previously, and also now shows that ASEAN is not just an economic body, but one that has a role to play in conflict resolution and crisis management within the region.
And what kind of regional threat scenarios do you think, humanitarian, security, or economic, does Malaysia's involvement help mitigate, if at all?
Well, certainly the strategy appears to be one of halting the conflict to allow humanitarian aid in much greater numbers to those in need in Myanmar. And from that, the issue of human trafficking will also likely be positively impacted, reducing that crisis, as well as achieving greater food and social security levels to the people. In terms of security, a ceasefire and subsequent end to the conflict would also impact on the power control the organized criminal gangs currently have, certainly making it safer in Myanmar and, of course, in the neighboring countries with Myanmar.
Hmm. And does Malaysia's diplomatic strategy in Myanmar elevate its stature in global crisis diplomacy, particularly with Anwar at the helm?
Most certainly it does. It shows Malaysia as an honest broker, able to put prejudices that other nations may have to the side for the betterment of the Myanmar people and the region in general. The key, of course, will be how effective and how forward moving Malaysia's negotiations in this will actually be.
Right. Looking ahead, what are some of the measures that Malaysia and the rest of the ASEAN countries should prioritize to ensure sustained peace within the region?
The resolution to this is really within the power of the Myanmar government. As we've seen in other conflict resolutions, economic benefits are often used as incentives. The reduction in sanctions, greater aid assistance, and ASEAN development financing would play a significant role in pushing the Myanmar government to a conflict resolution, particularly in light of the massive damage and social stresses and the cost of rebuilding caused by the recent earthquake. But these should also be tempered with a strategy of making sure Myanmar authorities understand the significant negative repercussions if they don't agree, don't negotiate or draw back, and any agreed future plan as put forward by Malaysia.
Hmm. Surely there is a lot of misinformation when it comes to the crisis in Myanmar. What do you think should Malaysians really understand when we talk about this crisis?
I think that we have to understand that Myanmar is not a normal country as we have in other parts of ASEAN. It is a military dictatorship in all intents and purposes. There are huge sanctions on the country which cause significant pain to the population in terms of food security, in terms of social order. And also, there are organized gangs within the country who are trying to profit from that. There's also the conflict going on between various groups and the government in Myanmar. So it's a very unstable environment. And I think that one of the things that Malaysia is trying to do is by negotiating with both parties is to try and bring some stability into this so that we can actually get to an end resolution for everybody in Myanmar and within ASEAN.
Hmm. Based on your observation throughout this crisis, do you think that Myanmar is open to solutions or suggestions from Malaysia and other ASEAN countries?
Yes, I think so. I think this is the very opportune time. They have been losing significant amounts of control over the population, and as hunger sets in, and as the Myanmar government restricts the amount of aid being brought in and issued by the NGOs, it's causing more social instability. So they realize that they have some significant issues internally to deal with, and it appears that this is the right time to be able to go in there and try and sort this out.
What do you think are some of the resolutions that we can achieve in order to solve this crisis?
Well, as I said, I think that there has to be a carrot and stick approach to this. Myanmar is suffering from significant sanctions. There is not enough aid getting in from, restricted by the Myanmar government to help the people. And once you get that aid in to help the people, a lot of the social issues that are taking place will start to diminish. There's also the issue of the earthquake and the massive destruction, and that will require a lot of rebuilding and a lot of international funding. So Myanmar is in a position right now where whatever Malaysia says, Myanmar is really going to have to take this very seriously if it wants to get itself out of this crisis. Otherwise, there is a real possibility that, we could see civil disorder of a significant level in the country.
Well, seeing as how Malaysia is quite involved in aiding the situation in Myanmar right now, do you think that's going to be an incentive or further motivation for Myanmar to come to a peace resolution?
Yes, I think it is. I have friends actually in Bangkok at the moment who are organizing massive levels of aid to go into Myanmar. So yes, the fact that not just the Malaysian government, but NGOs and others are actually trying to help is actually in Malaysia's favour in the negotiations with Myanmar, and shows that, as I said, that Malaysia is an honest broker here. They're not trying to get anything out of it. They're actually trying to help Myanmar get itself out of this problem.
Right. I would imagine one of the concerns that Malaysians would have is the refugee situation. We do have quite a number of them here in Malaysia. What are your comments on that?
The answer to the refugee problem is actually to have social stability within the country. So once you end the conflict, once you get aid in, once you start to get people a little bit more socially secure, then people will not want to leave the country. They will want to stay. Jobs will become available for them, and therefore that type of strategy from Malaysia will help reduce this particular refugee crisis.
Right. Thank you so much for your time and your insight, Peter. We look forward to having you in the studio. That was Peter
Thank you.
NICOLL, Managing Partner of Counter Risk Consultancy Malaysia, Sendirian Berhad, sharing his perspective on Malaysia's approach to the Myanmar crisis. Stay with us as we take a very short break. I will return with updates from more ASEAN countries. This is The Nation ASEAN Plus on Bernama TV. China and Indonesia on Monday celebrated the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations. They also commemorated the 70th anniversary of the Asian-African Conference, also known as the Bandung Conference. According to Chinese Foreign Minister Wang, both countries are good neighbors across the sea and good friends with a shared future. Meanwhile, Indonesian Foreign Minister Sugiono had this to say: in a world fraught with uncertainties, greater unity between the two countries is needed now more than ever before. Here's a quick history insight. Bandung hosted the first Asian-African Conference, and this was back in April 1955, marking the first time that countries in the Global South united to oppose imperialism and colonialism in defense of their sovereign rights and a more equitable world. Next, Indonesia and China have agreed to boost maritime cooperation, focusing on safety and security in the South China Sea. The move comes as Jakarta grows increasingly concerned about Chinese activity near the Natuna Islands, waters Indonesia controls, but Beijing also claims. Both countries signed a new deal involving Coast Guard coordination and joint military efforts. Leaders say they'll work together on cyber threats, terrorism and transnational crime despite growing regional tensions. In Thailand, the country faces serious risk from Trump's proposed 36% tariffs unless negotiations with the US are successful before the tariff moratorium expires in July. In 2024, Thailand shipped 849,000 metric tons of rice to the US, mainly of its most expensive fragrant jasmine variety, worth 28.03 billion baht. In all, Thailand exported 9.94 million tons of rice in 2024, worth 225.65 billion baht, with the US as its third largest market by volume, but most lucrative. Farmers in Thailand have already been on edge because of a 30% drop in domestic prices after India resumed exports in September. Still with Thailand, authorities are investigating a Chinese-owned steel supplier after a high-rise building in Bangkok collapsed following a powerful earthquake last month. The supplier is accused of providing steel rods that failed safety tests. The collapse killed dozens and raised questions about construction safety. The investigation also includes another Chinese contractor and possible illegal business operations. In other news, one of Cambodia's most well-known opposition figures is back in court. Rong Chun, a former union leader and top advisor to the opposition Nation Power Party, faced charges Wednesday in Phnom Penh. He's accused of causing problems and could face up to 6 years in prison. Critics say Cambodia's courts are used to silence political opponents, though the government claims it's upholding democracy and the rule of law. This has been your weekly roundup of ASEAN news. For more updates on ASEAN developments, visit the ASEAN page on bernama.com. I'm PASHA. This has been The Nation ASEAN Plus. Have a great weekend ahead.